Once upon a time there was a king. He lived in a beautiful palace in India. His kingdom was filled with trees, flowers, and a lovely river. The king had everything he wanted and was very happy. But there was one thing that this king hated, and that was bath time. The king had not washed for a week. He had not washed for a month. He had not washed for a whole year. And he had begun to smell. He was the smelliest king there has ever been. Nobody liked to be near the king. Until one day, the smell became too much for even the king himself. And the king said, rather sadly, "I think it is time I had a bath." The king walked slowly down to the river. Then everyone fell silent as the king stepped into the cool, clear river water. The king washed and scrubbed and brushed his teeth. He played with his toy ducks and little boat. Then at last, when he was quite clean, he called for the royal towel and stepped out of the river. When the king had finished drying himself, he saw that his feet were covered with dust. "Oh, bother," he said. "I forgot to wash them." So he stepped back into the river and soaped them well. But as soon as he stood on dry land, his feet became dirty. The king stared at his dirty feet. "I didn't wash them properly," he said crossly. The king scrubbed his feet until they shone, but when he stepped on the ground, his feet were dirty again. The king was furious. He called for his servant, Gabo. "Gabo," boomed the king, "the king has had a bath. The king is clean, but the earth is dirty. There is dust everywhere. Get rid of the dust so my feet stay clean. You have 3 days to rid the land of dust," said the king. "And if you fail, do you know what will happen to you?" "No, your majesty." "Zut!" cried the king. "Zut?" said Gabo. "What is zut?" "Zut is the sound of your head being chopped off. Now don't waste time," said the king. When something is dirty, you brush it. Gabo asked the villagers to help him. Swish, 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 all day long, until dust filled the air in a thick, dark cloud. Everyone started coughing and spluttering and bumping into each other. The king choked. "Gabo, where are you? I asked you to rid the land of dust, not fill the air with dust. You have 2 more days, or zut!" When something is dirty, you wash it. Gabo asked the villagers to help him. The villagers took their buckets to the well and filled them with water. Then they all began to pour. Sloosh, 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 all day long. Water flowed across the land and began to rise. The water reached everyone's ankles. Water rose to their knees. Water rose up to their waists. Water reached their chests. "Swim, everybody!" cried Gabo. "Gabo, I asked you to rid the land of dust, not turn our village into a swimming pool. You have 1 more day, or zut!" What am I going to do? When something is dirty, you cover it up. Gabo asked the villagers to help him. Each villager found a piece of cloth. Then needles were threaded, knots tied, and they all began to sew. They stitched a huge piece of cloth. The cloth spread across the land and fitted perfectly. "We're ready, Your Majesty!" The king stepped onto the cloth. The king walked across the cloth, very clean indeed. "Well done, Gabo, well done!" Then a little old man with a white beard stepped out of the crowd. He bowed low before the king. "Your Majesty, how will anything grow now that the land is covered with cloth?" "Your Majesty, you don't have to cover the land with cloth to keep your feet clean." The old man took a pair of scissors from his pocket. He bent down and began to cut the cloth around the king's feet. Snip, 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 snip. He cut out 2 small pieces of cloth. Then the old man took 2 long laces and tied the pieces of cloth to the king's feet. "Try them, Your Majesty." The king looked down at his feet. He had never seen anything like it. The king took a step. The king took another step. "Comfortable." The king walked. "It's clean, and the grass can grow. I can walk anywhere, and my feet will always be clean." What was the king wearing on his feet? He was wearing shoes. They were the first pair of shoes ever made, and people have been wearing them ever since. Snip, snap, snout. My story is out.